Welcome, everyone, to the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And we are discussing the Orville Season 3 recap and review. It's been an awesome season. So much to talk about. The fans are so passionate about the Orville and hopeful of its return. And we thought that we would give everyone here a treat and relive the last season, Orville New Horizons. Well, hopefully it's not the last season. My name is Kevin, and I will be your captain, but I'd like to introduce my crew. Starting off, of course, my friend for a very long time, fellow podcaster and brother from another mother, and, of course, co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. Please welcome Kyle Wagner. What's up, buddy?
I'll tell you what's up. We got Kalons, we got Mocklins, we've got egg salad sandwiches, we've got time travel, we got a whole season of the Orville to talk about and relive. And I'm just going to say it now, #renew the Orville. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited because we got a crew member back.
This is right. With us throughout this whole entire season, helping us out, and to quote Matt Damon in The Martian, I need to science the bleep out of this, is Haley. Welcome, Haley. How are you?
Hello. I am fantastic. Just remember, science, it's like magic, but it's real.
This is true. And we welcome back from a very long sabbatical in a very strange planet that I myself have been to and I love dearly, and that's called Scotland. And just back, into business, and we're happy to have her back. Miss Amy Nelson, welcome back. How are you?
Hello, my gosh. It has been so long, and thank you for covering for me while I was out and about. It was a really wonderful summer.
Well, I got to ask you, Haley. So I know you were having fun, but you were still paying attention to the Orville. Did you have any issues of I really want to talk about it, but no, then I got to really enjoy my vacation too.
Yeah,
What
well,
vacation?
Thankfully, I was visiting Trek people who also are Orville fans. So I was able to watch the Orville with great friends. So that made it even better.
Awesome.
Now, I do have one question for Amy. What happened to your accent?
Okay, funny thing. I came back from Scotland and my iPhone had mysteriously turned to British.
There you go. Well, also
That's not a bad thing.
We want to remind people too that, of course, Amy is also with us, but also with the Union Federation and its partner here, the BQN. How's things going on over there?
Very good. This is my first weekend back, so I finally did get to record for All Good Things, and we talked about Damage, and then we did our 101st episode of Galaxy Class. So
wow, it's been that much already. That's awesome. Yeah. Kyle.
I just wanted to shout out to All Good Things too. I was on a recent episode where we discussed the first ever episode of Lower Decks and had some fun doing that.
Did that bring back memories?
It was very interesting to take a reassessment of the show from watching the first episode to thinking about now and the path and how they introduced the characters, how much the characters have actually changed in such a short time as Lower Decks has gone on.
Yeah, nice. Well, guys, we're going to get right into this because we got a lot to cover. This is the Orville recap and review show of Season 3, New Horizons. It was quite a season. And now, too, as a reminder, we'll remind you later, too, it is now moved to Disney Plus for us, USA watchers here. And this is a big deal because, of course, Disney owns Fox and also owns Hulu. And we just want to let you know, please keep watching, let them stream because they do pay attention to those streaming numbers. Amy.
Is that all seasons or just
all
New
seasons.
Horizons?
All seasons are now on Disney Plus. Yes.
Yay, I can watch it without commercials.
Exactly. And that's important too, because they do pay attention to not only how many different people are streaming it, but also how many times it is streamed multiple times in a household. they can keep track of that. So it's been a fascinating season here, and so we're really, really excited about it. So here is season 3. We're going to get right into it, guys. Let's talk about season 3, episode 1, Electric Sheep. Quick synopsis here. As the Orville nears completion of a refit in space dock, resentment among the ship's compliment towards Isaac arise due to him being reinstated after betraying the planetary union to the Kalon, but also betraying his family on the Orville. And one of the things that we're going to do on this podcast, we're going to remind listeners what we actually, our main topics that we were discussing in our away missions, and some other additional notes so we can remember, and you guys can remember if you were listening to the show or not, but the things that were most important specifically about the episode, including not just the main plot, but maybe a B plot and some other funny things as well. In our away missions, we talked about coming to grips with trauma. That was a main thing that happened in this first episode. And also just the Orville is back and how excited we were. Some additional notes too. Isaac commits suicide under the pressure of not being liked, pretty much, and that was a heavy topic to discuss right out of the base there. And we also talked about the new look of the uniforms and the tech, the new Orville retrofit, the new Pterodon Union fighter as well, and we also had a new shuttle design. But most importantly, we had a new cast member, and that was Ensign Charlie Burke, played by Ann Winters, who obviously had her reasons for not liking Kalons, and more specifically, Isaac. So we're going to start with you, Amy, taking you back to when you first saw that. Give us your reactions.
Yeah, that was such a heavy episode to launch a brand new season. Usually you want it fun and lighthearted. And, sort of think back to the very beginning, how funny that was. And we don't get that here. We get the aftermath of the battle with the Kalon, and then all of the issues that go along with that. And yeah, dealing with the trauma in so many different levels, and you get it on both sides. Isaac is definitely feeling trauma himself. He's not feeling productive. He doesn't want to harm the crew, and he feels like they're not being efficient. So he's going to do something about it. Again, just sort of, I use quotes because he loves his family. He doesn't have emotions, but that was his reasons. Very powerful episode to just start the season with.
And what was your first reactions on Ensign Charlie Burke?
Yeah, she was a little rough, but I ended up liking her. But this first one, it was like, whoa, who is she and why is she being so abrasive?
Kyle, did you have any other quick things you wanted to say about this episode? It's been a while since you've watched it.
Yeah, I go back to it, and how such a heavy episode it was for the launch, and of course for us getting used to it being the show being on Hulu now without the time constraints of being on Fox. I thought was very interesting, and going back. And also, Kevin, with these first few episodes, just the start of us, because you and I were doing the show, and us talking about the overall missing a little fun, hence why we created a addition to the show talking about the fun elements in each episode of the Orville. But yeah, this was the Orville, the first few episodes, it was missing a little bit of its fun factor.
Yeah, I did these notes called the Kevin Fun Check when it started checking in after a couple episodes. But yeah, you're right. Haley, what are your you have any quick thoughts on that episode?
No, I think it was just quite interesting to come out of the previous season and discuss something that was really quite hard to deal with. But again, I think it relates to so much, that's something people have to deal with in life in general. And again, I know I had mentioned it before, but I just love that there was that follow through, that not everybody was okay, because we see that so often in television, that something traumatic happens and then in the next episode, everything's hunky dory. And you're just like, that's not how it works. And yeah, some people can be okay quicker than other people, but it was nice to kind of see that follow through. To counter Amy, I was not a fan of Ensign Burke.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention real quick, of course, we had the pterodon here as well. It was kind of cool, but we didn't get the action we wanted until much, much later. But we always kind of joked along the season. It always seemed to be like taking up 2 parking spots in the docking bay when other ships would come in. We're like, you guys going to use that thing? What's going on? But I just want to mention too that one of the things that I was noticing was just the retrofit, the update on the costumes, the update on Isaac. If you take a look at older Isaac pictures, and I'd made a joke because when the Kalon came back in the picture, they also looked the same. So maybe they're all like iPhones. They all got the same update and they all changed at the same time. So that was kind of funny. But the next episode, guys, things started to get a little dark and creepy, and that is Shadow Realms, as the crew of the Orville undergoes diplomatic negotiations with the Krill to access a previously unknown region of space. Claire reunites with her ex-husband, who happens to be her former mentor and the chief diplomat assigned to their mission, also an admiral. Meanwhile, despite warnings from the Krill, the crew undertake an exploration mission in an uncharted sector that is supposedly inhabited by demons. And our away mission here was the character discussion. We learn more about Dr. Claire Finn and her past, and she's been married to our guest star character, Admiral Christie. Mission 2, the episode bears noticeable similarities to Star Trek The Next Generation episode Genesis Season 7, and I also found it had similarities to the TNG Season 4 episode Identity Crisis. And this was the scary episode, and even the Krill show fear in this one. And the Expanse, as they call it, is a place of pure evil inhabited by demons, and even the most righteous are possessed by the evil and commit heinous acts. And this episode seems to go much darker than the TNG episode comparisons that turn the crew. And Amy, I just want to say, I was thinking of you when this episode came up because we were doing our Orville TNG episode comparisons. And I can't wait to revisit this later. And I want to get your thoughts on this episode.
Yeah, when you were talking about Genesis and Identity Crisis, I'm like, yes, exactly. And I love Identity Crisis. Like, that's one of my all-time favorite. There's so much good math in it. But yeah, just sort of that thing of that transformation and sort of slowly. And I remember, yeah, this creepiness. And was this the one where yeah, it was sort of the horror episode.
Yes.
And it was
Yep.
very, very scary. And I'm like, are they doing that really so soon? Again, I was just so surprised because this was episode 2 and they went dark and they went deep.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Kyle, any quick additions to this episode? Any thoughts?
The episode that Seth MacFarlane wrote while he was watching Event Horizon. This one was definitely different than any other episode of Orville we've ever had. I know we had a pretty deep discussion about the comparisons to the Next Generation episodes, but I think at this point, Kevin, again, I'm going to go back to it. We were really starting to have a little concern that they've had taken the fun out of the Orville after watching this episode. And
yeah,
not a real smart admiral, by the way, just sticking his face right into the alien substance. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I just got blasted. So, but yeah, there were some interesting revelations about Claire that, I got to be honest with you. I felt like, okay, we had this, but then we didn't really have any follow-up on it. And I was kind of thinking to the point, what was the point of having her be married in the first place when we really never followed up on this again? So it's one of those things that I'm curious. That's a dangling plot thread that I would be curious to see.
Well, if we get more Orville, Kyle, I have all of the confidence that they will tie up stuff and revisit stuff, because that's all they did this season, and it was fantastic.
Well, and I think they used this episode and also giving us the fact that she was married before to give the space between her, Claire, and Isaac, so that when they do come together, like, we have some distance, we have some time, that it seems more organic, I think.
Good point. Haley, your thoughts on this episode? Anything else you want to add?
Aside from I hate jump scares and I'm not a fan of the scary stuff, I think, it would have been kind of fun if, some of the ship had been affected. But again, that would be way too close to Genesis. But it was nice to see that, even the the krill were afraid of something, because they don't fear anything. And so I think that was really quite fantastic. And then also sitting here thinking about it, it reminds me of Star Trek Beyond, when Spock gives Uhura the necklace, and that's how he's able to track her. They did the same thing in this, because he had the ring on his finger and it was made of something that wouldn't be found on their ship otherwise. And I was like, oh, hey, yeah, there's that.
Yeah,
He had a
that's a good
radioactive ring, I
callback.
guess.
Kyle.
I just wanted to say too, it would have been ironic if they would have called this alien race the Hertz.
The Hertz. Little too on the nose there, Kyle. Little too on the nose there. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the next episode here. This is where things started to get a little more interesting. And this was called Mortality Paradox, Episode 3. The USS Orville investigates signs of advanced civilization living on a barren planet, but end up trapped on a world that seemed to bend space and time. And our away mission for number 1 was the topic of this episode was something that the Highlander movie and TV series deals with, is the burden of immortality. And away mission number 2 is, do you agree that this is the best of season 3 thus far? Did some of the fun return? And what I mean by that is we had the Zilean chocolate truffles that Talea's mom makes. Mercer says they are the most dense chocolate he's ever tasted. And Tala replies, heavy gravity, heavy desserts. Bortus is dieting for a summer body. And Bortus says to the snobby popular girl, you have a 5 head. And of course, we get the Mocklin funeral eggs, creepy. But then we also get Randall, the bully, is a cave troll that torments everyone's fear. Well, more like Malloy's fear. And that's kind of what we get here, is that we get a callback to the Mad Idolatry season 1, episode 12, where Denal originates from this multiphasic planet that the members once worshipped Kelly Grayson as the Kelly. Roughly 50,000 years have passed from their perspective, of course, since then, and they evolve so fast in our eyes, in the Orville's eyes, that now they're kind of changing. And we're getting this weird kind of, and I want to ask you about this, Amy. A lot of people have now referred to Denal, now that she's, and the race seems immortal, as the Orville's Q alien species now. Your thoughts on this episode? What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to go Q, but help me remind the chase, that episode. That's where my mind went with this episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Of TNG, the chase, where the different alien species were trying to find what they thought might have been a weapon, but then they find out that they're all kind of, connected. From the same.
Yeah, it was the DNA strand, and they mapped it out. And
yeah,
because that sort of brings you back to who we are, and that's what they did. That's like, yeah, we used to be them on Mad Idolatry, but now here we are. And so I associated it more with the chase.
Did you notice that the fun was starting to return more? Or that we got some more interactions, personal interactions between the crew? Did you notice the humor was kind of lightening up a little bit more from the previous episodes?
Yes, I'm sure I did. You were saying those additional notes, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally remember the chocolate. And of course, my mind went to Troy, and I'm like, she would love this chocolate. But yeah, it's not, unfortunately, now looking at it through all of them and seeing them all, this one is sort of faded from my memory.
Interesting. Well,
yeah.
Kyle, we had Elizabeth Giles, who played Denal, who is this female multiphasical planet humanoid. And there was a thread from Star Trek fans on the Orville that were saying this kind of feels like Q because they have come to this immortal thing, and that's where I made the tie to Highlander. Any quick thoughts on this episode?
One, this was the episode I really think started the trend of the Orville revisiting a lot of stuff from the prior 2 seasons. With the Kalon carryover, that kind of felt more of a natural progression because of what had happened. This is the episode where they started, okay, now we're really going to go back and pull from some plot strings. And I'm sorry, Denali just went home to the game grid.
Tron reference. That's good. Haley, what about you? Any thoughts on this episode?
No, because as you were reading the synopsis, I was like, I don't remember this one. And then you started reading the additional stuff that we had mentioned, and I was like, okay, this is the one where they were at the school, and and then things were like changing, and because it was going to what each person was afraid of or something. And I'm sorry, that would be my worst nightmare. No, thank you. So I have no other thoughts other than I just didn't remember it.
That's okay. All right. That's why I bring this up, so we can kind of, jog your memory, if anything. So, yeah. All right. Next, we have the episode that I was so happy that we finally got because it was very important for fans like myself. And guys, I asked at the end of season 2, please bring back Talea. I love that relationship, how she was pretending to be human for a while. And, but we felt that there was something there, and there was. Gently Falling Rain, episode 4. Corin, the leader of the Krill, invites the Planetary Union to his world to sign a treaty. Unfortunately for the Union, not everyone on planet Krill wants a treaty with the Union. And of course, referring to Talea, who basically has a coup, so to speak, and takes over and becomes the leader. And our away mission number 1 was we visit the Krill homeworld for the first time. And we was wondering what we thought of their cities, their culture. And of course, away mission number 2, Talea returns. I got my wish. Talea returns, but she has a daughter with Ed Mercer. Fun returns too with this episode. Fun. We had the Annie cast in the beginning. I believe it was a Zelayan Annie. And we also had that pub crawl through history. And this is where we start seeing Lamar flirting with Tala. The existence of the daughter of Anaya looks to be used as a plan to stop Talea from threatening war against the Union. And that's what the Union was possibly thinking of doing to help save the peace treaty. And the question, and there's the scene with Ed and his daughter was just like, wow. And then you kind of see, this is where we start to see Ed not, he's front and center now, of course, for this one. But then you'll notice he kind of starts taking a back seat. And we see a more, not just mature Ed, but also mature Seth, I think, in maybe the writing and the direction of the show. We're starting to see the ties, as Kyle mentioned, to previous episodes. Of course, this episode had ties to Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes, season 2, episode 4. And so, and the Krill episode from season 1, episode 6. This also is the introduction to Bruce Boxleitner as President Alcazan. And of course, we had Talea and Charlie Townsend as Anaya, the Krill girl. So I want to get with you there, Amy. What were your thoughts on Gently Falling Rain?
Yeah, this episode I remember very well. Yes, I also am a fan of Talea, and I love that Mercer still has the hope that she's going to do the right thing after all of this time. And then that he learns that he has this kid and how he navigates that and doesn't undermine her authority there, but like is trying to get her to do the right thing. Loved seeing all the Krill, a lot of political commentary going strong. That was one thing that I was watching and I'm like, I can't believe Seth MacFarlane is saying this on TV. Like it made me very happy. This was a really, really good episode. I sort of want Ed and Talea to get back together, but I just don't think she's going to come around.
interesting points there. I like that. That created some good discussion on the show. Kyle, quick thoughts on Gently Falling Rain.
This was the episode where the Orville hit its stride. This episode and the episodes that follow this, in my mind, are easily top 10 of all-time science fiction television. Seth MacFarlane found his voice here. I think he found his balance with the Orville being on Hulu and having the freedoms that he had because of that. And he changed this show with this episode. This show was a very good show, but with this episode, he elevated it to the standard that people are talking about and have been talking about with this season of the Orville, where people are talking about this being one of the greatest science fiction shows of all time. And it starts here, and the run of about 4 episodes, including this episode, is just, it's mind-blowing and just some of the best work, not only as a writing and acting, but just as everything, all the elements came together perfectly. And it starts here, and this is, again, we're going to revisit this particular topic of Ed and his daughter before this podcast is over, but this is one of the biggest things that I still am like, this is something I need to get a little bit more of, and that's why I'm praying we get something back for the Orville.
Haley, thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I thought, like Amy, that it was pretty bold. And granted, we know that they were filming this before everything and whatnot had changed so drastically. But I thought it was really wonderful to have that mirror up to what is currently going on in our country and around the world. And I really loved this episode for what it did. I think this really... it was serious, but it wasn't on the same level as the first episode was. The first episode was serious because, we dealt with suicide and we dealt with tension and whatnot. And this was serious in a different way. It was a diplomatic, political, but then you find out, here's this mix thrown in where he realizes Ed has a daughter, and what do you do with that? And so I think it was really well done.
It's interesting. You had touched on something, Amy, that I had said on social media a few more episodes in. This episode also touched on abortion and obviously the political climate as well. And this happened before the recent Roe versus Wade thing. He had written this, and it was filmed before this. Very timely episode. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was I felt that, and I made the claim, Star Trek has always been really good at touching on social commentary. Kind of bouncing around it, not always being direct about it, but letting you know what they're actually talking about. The Orville is putting it right in front of your face and not showing any shame about it. And I find that very, very fascinating and also very refreshing. And I thought that this episode was just like, wow. And I was like, okay, they are serious. And I just could not wait for the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, guys, Tale of Two Topas. Episode 5. Tensions between Kelly and the Mocklins result when she helps Topa prepare for the Union Point entrance exam. Buried secrets resurface when Topa begins to question herself. Our way mission number 1, Clyde and Bortus discussion. Are we glad that the relationship ended? Did it? Will it? Have we seen the last of Clyden? Remember, during this episode, we thought we might not see him again. Way mission number 2, Topa discussion. Topa struggles with the identity and is confused and scared. Did you ever think that the Topa character arc would turn this way? Are you happy with the direction that it went? And we had some additional notes. The bittersweet ending. Bortus and Clyden's marriage finally falls apart with Clyden disowning Topa. Heartbreaking scene. However, the crew rallies to help Topa live as her true self while Bortus reaffirms that he loves her as she is. We had a fun thing here, the Temple of Doom reference, the tomb that they were working on in the beginning with the heavily booby traps and the funny scene with Isaac activating them. There's also some more fun. Naked people are funny. The ensign that follows his race's edict to not wear any clothing on the first day of the month. Kelly is showing her commander duties and convinces him to at least wear pants. That's a thread we're going to start hitting on soon, Kelly, and how strong she was this season. And 2 seasons after Bortus was interrupted during a karaoke night, we finally get to see him singing, and he does a pretty good job. And of course, this had a direct reference to season 1, episode 3, About a Girl. And of course, our notable guest stars was Andy Chapman as Admiral Howland, and of course, Chad L. Coleman as Clyden, and Umani Pullman as Topa. Amy, your thoughts on A Tale of Two Topas?
Man, this episode again, and coming off of Gently Falling Rain, with how on the nose Seth MacFarlane is talking about current events and what's going on. Like, it was powerful, and it was showing both sides. I mean, you sort of felt for Clyden and his expectation and what he went through. It was very wow. This is a really good episode. Yeah, I like it.
Kyle, your thoughts?
This goes back to what we were talking about with the last episode too. Hitting topics when they wrote this episode that at the time they were just in their I guess you could say in their infant stages, and yet when this episode comes out, it's hitting it right when there's major things happening in our world that deal with topics like this. And it's like, are we sure Seth didn't have an orb of prophecy next to him? Because this happened a lot during this season. But I mean, this episode in particular, so emotional, so powerful. I know at the time we did the episode too, I brought up the point of whether you like Clyden or not, the performance of Chad L. Coleman as Clyden was absolutely phenomenal. And here's somebody who's one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, and yet he's playing this part where most people just want to hate him at the end of this episode for how he is. And it's just an amazing acting job. And again, we're right in this run of just the Orville going up to a different stratosphere with how it is, how it's written, and how it's handling topics.
I'm going to give you credit. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Amy. No, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Because I remember as you were talking, it seemed like Topa got pretty big. He's now like the same age as Claire's kids. And I'm like, that was a pretty big jump. It sort of looks like the Alexander on TNG,
Yeah,
all of a sudden, Alexander's grown.
There was a comment, I think, in the second season where their growth rate was very high and fast, just so they can get past the whole awkward kid phase, and you can write that in there and stuff like that. But Kyle, I wanted to mention, as I was going to say, was you've always thrown the flag up there for Chad L. Coleman, and it's easy for fans to really dislike a character because of the way that they're portrayed, the actor portrays them. And we need to have a reality check at times that it's written that way. And there's a reason why you're supposed to not like the person, but you should not reflect that on the actor. And I'm glad that we got a redemption a little bit later on. Kyle.
I just want to throw out too, Amy is actually getting a different side of Chad L. Coleman right now because she is watching The Expanse, which he is a big part of it at the point where she's at in her viewing of The Expanse. So Amy's kind of knowing what I'm talking about right now, is about just how amazing of an actor Chad L. Coleman is.
Yeah, I just learned that, and I was like, how did I not know this? It's so cool.
Haley, your thoughts on A Tale of Two Topas?
Yeah, coming off of the previous episode and then coming into this one, I remember discussing this with you guys, and it was really hard for me to not go with discussing last episode and this one, to go into areas where I know we try not to take this show politically, but then as a woman, just with everything that had been going on and was going to happen and things like that. And so it was really powerful to have these 2 episodes, I think, next to each other. I think it wouldn't have worked as well if they had not come one after the other, just because of that significance. And I really appreciate that they decided to do this, and that they wrote in that, Topa was going to become Topa and be herself rather than what her culture and others were telling her to be. And I thought that was wonderful.
And the acceptance of Bortus, and thus ending the relationship with his, his mate, Clyden, was a key turn as well, because you started Bortus's reactions through this whole episode, and seeing how he was reacting to what everyone was saying, Clyden and of course Topa, and seeing him come around to being the father that he needed to be, and starting to realize that the stuff that was happening among his culture is not a good thing. So, all right, guys, the next. Oh, Kyle, yes.
I just want to throw out something Haley said real quick. Since I've got it over here, I just want to say how proud I am of this podcast and the people on this podcast, because normally we don't hit certain topics on the Fandom Podcast Network, but we did on these 2 episodes, and I felt like everybody handled this with a certain class and a certain understanding and a certain respect of everybody's opinions. And I just wanted to say, how honored I am to be part of a podcast that can have that kind of open discussion in the way that we had on these 2 episodes, because we needed to have that discussion. It was too powerful not to.
That's a great thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. And I definitely mirror those sentiments, because sometimes you just got to talk about the hard stuff, especially, as I mentioned, the Orville likes to put it right in front of your face. You can't ignore it. So yeah, well said. All right, guys, let's get into the next episode here. Episode 6, Twice in a Lifetime. The crew must rescue Gordon from a distant yet familiar world. After Gordon, Malloy is sent to another space and time, it is up to the crew to save the timeline and rescue their friend. Away Mission 1. We talked about the road trip with Isaac and Burke, and we were wondering, obviously Isaac was trying to repair the relationship there, and they have to go get that thing and buried in the thing, and they go to the biker bar, and we're asking what your thoughts on that, how that was going. If we were wondering if Charlie was going to forgive Isaac, we didn't know if that was going to happen. Way Mission number 2 went into the deep stuff here. Malloy's family, and we talked about Scott Grimes and how his character and his acting was just phenomenal this season. And his performance and the scenes with Mercer and Grayson, especially when he didn't want to go back and leave his family. And we asked about the conundrum of Malloy's family. And heartbreakingly, when Laura Huggins says, "What about us?" Remember, she was pregnant. They had a son already. And was it the right thing to do? Malloy was when Malloy's happy, we like him happy. But it was tough when we saw that they had to confront him later and tell him what they did. And Malloy was I understand why you guys did it, but man, it was tough to make that command decision that they did. And a lot of us were not happy with that because of what happened. And my favorite episode was Lasting Impressions from both season 1 and 2. And that's where we got Laura Huggins, and Leighton Meester is back for this episode. And I think still this one might be my favorite of this season. Still kind of going back here. Gordon's party. He's singing a song from Lasting Impression. And he teaches Bortus and I think it's Charlie on how to take a selfie. And this is when the sandwich is sent into the future, wondering if we're going to get it back. Mark Jackson is out of Isaac mode. We get to see him, of course, walking around as a human. And the dinner scene with Malloy and Laura's family, awkward as it was very important. And Tala and John Lamar's relationship takes a turn. That Zilean massage. And as I mentioned, a throwback to season 2, episode 11, Lasting Impressions. Amy, your thoughts on Twice in a Lifetime?
Man, this episode, we were coming, Tale of Two Topas, Twice in a Lifetime. And I was like, this was the episode where I'm like, they are explaining Star Trek better than Star Trek is explaining. Like the timeline and why he couldn't stay, like it was visually clear as I was watching this episode. And what Scott Grimes did, it was ugly cry. It was, and I felt so much for him. And having that callback with Laura Huggins and all of the fun that they had. And now here was this timeline that it worked, and how wonderful for him, but it's not real. And again, it just goes back to living a real life. I think has been a theme in this, and you sort of get it with Tale of Two Topas, and I mean, Gently Falling Rain. Like, it was really crystallized here of just living your best life. That was intense, deep relationships. You had to trust the crew, but man, it was an excellent, excellent episode. Yeah, it had highs and lows. Yeah.
Kyle, your thoughts?
I said it a couple times during this season. I'm going to say it again here. Scott Grimes is one of the most underrated talents in Hollywood. The man is a great underrated actor. He's got an amazing talent for singing. This episode, when they allow him to just do what he does, he is phenomenal. And this episode brought up so many emotions, and I know we had a pretty intense conversation about which was the right way to handle this, and you could see it from both angles. But this is one of the biggest emotional gut punches this show has done, and it's done several. It's not the biggest one, and we'll get to that here shortly, at least in my opinion. But this was an episode that, you feel heartbroken, because it's like every time you think Malloy finds happiness, he gets it pulled away from him. And it was amplified by 1,000 in this episode, and that's what made it just so immensely powerful and so hard. And a lot of people, like you said, Kevin, were very upset when this episode was all said and done.
They basically erased a family, basically. And that was tough to take because of the wonderful performance by Scott Grimes, Leighton Meester. It was just gut-wrenching. Haley, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting that again, it was so serious this season, but it really was wonderful in each of the episodes and the stories that they were telling. I know we had a hard time discussing this one, but I have to go back to, I really liked what was going on with Isaac and Burke, her being forced to work together, because we're all forced to work with people that we don't like and have a hard time getting along with. And sometimes you just have to find that one thing that's a commonality, and that is what you do. And you focus on that rather than all of the differences, just to get through when you have to work with someone. So them having to do their thing at the house and doing it together, knowing that no one else could do that with Charlie, was really fun to see. And the bar scene was just great.
Definitely. The bar scene was great. It appears this is not your hobby.
Oh no, I am losing.
All right, guys, let's get into the next episode here. Okay. Next we have is From Unknown Graves. Kelly and the woman of the Orville play host to the delegation of the Genesee diplomats, a fiercely matriarchal society. Ed leads a team to Satula 4 and discovers a Kalon who is very different from others. Meanwhile, John and Tala try to make the relationship work. Our away mission number 1, we had the history of the Kalon with empathy. We talked about Timus. And this was an episode that showed how the revolt started from the Kalon. And we didn't quite know that right away when the episode started. We were just seeing this family that were opening up a box and there's a brand new Kalon, and they were a servant, and they started abusing the servant. Way mission number 2, Claire and Isaac and empathy. We talked about empathy. Not only that Timus had it, but can Isaac learn it, and will Charlie show it? Additional episode notes, the dinner with the Genesee. One of them wants to mate with Ed, and Gordon says, I'll do it. The incompatibility of Tala and John, despite their feelings for one another. And of course, we talked about the Genesi. And we also talked about how this episode had a lot going on, but we were able to stay in touch with it. And we talked about a really balanced script discussion because there was a lot going on here. And of course, this episode had connections to all the Kalon episodes. But guys, when I was doing a rewatch, I found out this also had a connection to season 2, episode 11, All the World is a Birthday Cake. This is the one where the Orville makes first contact with a semi-primitive society. And this is the one where Bortus and Kelly mentioned they share a birthday within a week of each other. And this is the people that rule the world by astrology signs, so to speak. But before they do that, this is when Tala comes on board for the first time, and she's the new security officer. And Ed's questioning her, like, didn't you punch your captain in the nose or the face? And she mentions the Genesi for the first time in that episode, and this society that, of course, it is run by the women. And I'm like, oh my God, they're just referencing everything. This is awesome. And of course, we have the awesome cast of the Genesi. We also have the mean alien family, as I referred to them, that mistreated that one Kalon. That was K1. And then, of course, we have Timus, that's played by Christopher Larkin. Amy, we get a backstory of the Kalon and the reason why they revolted. Your thoughts on this episode and Timus that has emotions.
Yeah, that was really interesting to see that we're getting these generational Isaacs or Kalon, and seeing, what happened. Because it was explained a little bit, that they were abused and they gathered together and overthrew the humans. Like, we got that. But to see it in action really gave context and flavor to that story. I loved seeing all of the women. I was like, oh, it's Angel One from TNG. But they did it much better. I will say that.
Whoa. Hold on. Are you tipping your hat for if we do a comparison? I'm just going to say, because I don't want you to cancel the possibility that we're going to do that episode, but I'm just going to say.
Angel One, Riker's nipple, what's not to love? But the Orville really does it well.
Yeah, this is true. All right, Kyle, your thoughts on oh gosh, what was the episode? I'm sorry. For Unknown Graves, sorry.
Unknown Graves.
For all that is happening in this episode to me is the biggest emotional gut punch of the Orville. And the scene where Isaac finally agrees to get the procedure done so he has emotions. And he is just exploding with all of these emotions to Claire. And Claire's hearing these things that she so desperately wanted to hear from Isaac. And then like that, it's gone.
Mm.
And just the emotional gut punch to Claire. And how, even though she finds this out and she's okay with knowing that now, to have that brief moment of just pure bliss for her and have it then taken away and to find out you can't get it back. And on one hand, you look at it, it's a great writing decision because it also keeps from a really easy way to write the Kalons back as allies or do something to make the Kalons allies again. But the whole empathy thing of the Kalons, I mean, you actually feel for the Kalons when you see how the family treated the one Kalon and how, if that's how they were all treated on their planet. The very interesting scene between Timmons and Ensign Burke, where Ensign Burke is seeing this empathy from a Kalon, where she's just got it in her head, they're just machines, uncaring, so on and so forth. There's so much that just happens in this episode, but to have that moment of getting basically everything you've hoped for and desired for Dr. Finn and to lose it like that, that's just, I mean, that just rips your heart out.
Good point. Yeah, it was a gut punch. Haley, your thoughts on this episode for Unknown Graves?
Yeah, no, it's really incredible to look at this, and they gave everybody a chance to have empathy for an AI race that in the previous season was wanting to, and is still at this point, wanting to wipe out all biological life in the known universe. For that to happen and for you to feel bad for what happened to their like original the original Kalon is really quite incredible and fantastic writing to be able to do that, because that doesn't happen easily. And I loved getting that backstory, even though we knew what it was. To really kind of understand it and flesh it out was I think a wonderful choice in this episode. And again, plays into later, which I totally did not see coming, and I know we'll get to later. But anyway, so it was really well done.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, guys. You think maybe things might slow down for the Orville? You know, maybe be a fun episode, maybe? No, things get serious again. There is some fun in it, but Midnight Blue is next, guys. Wow. The crew visit Havina's sanctuary world and embark on a journey that may leave the Union more vulnerable. Away mission number 1. We have the Mocklin character discussion, part 1. Your thoughts on how the character of Havina took a turn by taking advantage of Topa's admiration for her to make her a spy. Bortus may not forgive her. Would you? Dolly Parton returns. Dolly's influence on Havina's song Try by Dolly. And we had a beautiful shot, by the way, of the Orville moving into position. There were some really cool special effects in this season, and that was one of them that stood out to me. And then away mission number 2, we had our continuous discussion on the Mocklin characters, our moments between Bortus and Topa, and Bortus's fatherly revenge. Now that guy's got no eyes. In an emotional moment with injured Topa, Bortus called out the Mocklin representatives at the Union delegation and its representatives. Clyden returns. Do you forgive his character after Chad's performance? And that end dinner scene with Bortus, Topa, Clyden, and Kelly. Additional moments. There was a moment between Bortus and Kelly on their way to rescue Topa. Just a small moment. Did you like it? Dislike this moment? What did you think of it? This relationship was explored. We also had a Dan sighting. I was wondering where Dan was. We had that weird alien in engineering that went blah, 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 blah. Didn't have enough Dan. Needed more Dan. And of course, Dolly Parton returned as well, guys. Dolly Parton. By the way, Miss Amy Nelson, I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
When you were over there in the UK-ish area, you had seen this before us. And in the message, you said, Dolly Parton. I hadn't seen it yet.
Okay.
Oh,
Usually
snap.
I'm in Pacific time and I'm usually the last one to know. I totally was just so excited. I forgot I was a day earlier.
That's okay. Now, wait, hold on now. Before you give us your thoughts, I need to set this up real quick, okay? Because I quoted what Gordon said to the Mocklin delegation, because Gordon pretty much said what we were all thinking, okay? And I think it's important that I repeat this. Gordon says, look, I know I'm not supposed to talk here, and I'm probably going to get court-martialed, but somebody got to call out these assholes. Every time they cross a line, we let it go because we're scared to fight the Kalon without them. And every time we compromise, they still act like they're the ones getting the shaft. And then he directs himself towards the Mocklins. You treat people like garbage. And then when you get called on it, you bitch and moan that we're not respecting your beliefs. Well, screw you and your... And then Mercer interrupts him. So I just want to bring that up, Amy, because... he pretty much said what we've all been thinking ever since the Mocklins were the Mocklins. And I want to get your thoughts on this episode. And by the way, you're forgiven. I just thought that was funny. I had to bring up the spoiler thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just was so excited. What an amazing, powerful episode. And yeah, they're just hitting it. And just 2 episodes ago, we were, dealing with Topa and that whole thing. The questions you asked, I sort of wanted to give my answers. When the first time watching this episode and Clyden comes back, I'm like, whoa, this is way too soon. The things that he said to Topa, the things that he said to Clyden, I was like, no. And then it's like, okay, what is the Orville trying to teach me? Is there forgiveness? If we continue to hate Clyden, will he ever learn? Will he ever make that shift? And we don't know. And you want to give the benefit of the doubt to everyone and give them the chance to change. And it was a struggle for me and my heart, because what he said in Tale of Two Topas and leaving them, I was like, well, good riddance. We don't need him in our life. But then he comes back. It wasn't until my second rewatch that I was like, okay, I'm going to accept him. I can forgive. But it was tough. And I think that those issues that this showed in this episode are very powerful, very relatable. Like we can put them and use them in our lives. And yeah, Dolly Parton, my goodness, that woman is gold. Love her.
Question though, I did want to ask you about the turn that Havina took. She took advantage of the situation and Topa's admiration for her.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Sometimes you get those leaders who will do anything, and Havina was willing to risk Topa's life.
Yeah. Kyle, your thoughts on this episode? And by the way, I just want to throw another fun fact here. This is where we get to see other Yaphet aliens within the council. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was good.
First, I want to address what Havina did, because it led to one of the best moments, I think, of Captain Ed Mercer in this series, when he's having that conversation with her and he basically calls her out on it. Yeah. And just, it was probably the finest captain's moment from Ed Mercer, I think, in the series. It was that powerful. But I remember when we first recorded this on this episode too, there was a lot of discussion we had about the Clyden situation, because Kevin, both you and I talked about, well, is Clyden going to be waiting at the base when they kidnap Topa? And we talked about that, how that thought process had maybe crossed our minds. But Dolly Parton is a national treasure. The powerfulness of just Bortus speaking with them looking at Topa, and the strength of Topa to not get healed up, to know she's got to stand there injured and beaten in front of everybody. And the strength that took from her was just so outstanding. And the young actress who plays Topa, it was absolutely phenomenal in the season. Again, getting back to the Clyden thing too, I think one of the most interesting things there is I didn't feel like there was forgiveness, but there was an understanding that sometimes, again, you don't really know what you have until you're about to lose it. And Clyden even says it himself. Even though I left, I knew you, in the back of my mind, you were with Bortus, you were okay. Then you weren't. And then the revelation hit. And while Clyden has, I think, in my personal mind, still has many things to prove, you have to start somewhere. And I think it was a huge first step here, not only for Clyden, but just as importantly for Bortus and for Topa. And I know I brought it up when we watched the episode too, that final scene with Kelly and Clyden, and you added in, Kevin, that little moment that happened between Bortus and Kelly, which, could have just been heat of the moment thing, or I've been curious to know if were they going to play up more on that or not. But I think what we saw later on in the season is that was just a moment in that particular time frame. But yeah, just again, the Topa episodes are probably the most powerful episodes of the Orville across the board.
Well said. Haley.
All I have left to say after all of this is bye, Felicia, to the Mocklins. Take your butts out of here. So long, good riddance.
All right, guys, things step it up again here. Ah, man. All right. Next, we have episode 9, Domino. The creation of a powerful weapon puts the crew and the entire Union in a political and ethical dilemma. Our away mission number 1, rest in peace, Charlie. Charlie gives her life to save everyone while she makes sure the weapon is destroyed. Thoughts on Ensign Charlie Burke's story arc in season 3, and has your opinion changed on the character since she was first introduced? Obviously, she was a one-season run character, and she brought up a lot of questions that a lot of us were thinking as well, and we talked about that. Way mission number 2, Future Unknown, knowing that was going to be the next episode. The Orville fan love is real. This is where Orville fans like myself started going to social media, renew the Orville. And I got a lot of responses on my social media push that I was really proud of, but I wasn't the only one. And I want to give a shout out to everyone that's been doing that. And the thoughts on the surge of the fan outpour to renew the Orville. So we had a very fun scene in the beginning where we had both Gordon and Charlie sing a duet. It was Flowers Never Bend in the Rainfall by Simon and Garfunkel. Some great action scenes. We had the strike team skydive out of the shuttle. Kelly and Talea's fist fight with another great moment too. The episode did a tremendous job with small silent moments like Charlie watching as Isaac disarms a Moclan who was about to kill her, only to then spare the Moclan and allow them to escape with their life. Seth MacFarlane's quiet moments of grief during the funeral was another standout. And there was a lot of character development in this episode as well. Power play. Did the alliance between the Krill and the Moclan surprise you? It's one of the things we discussed. What observations did you take from it? The weapon MacGuffin. This is one of the most interesting parts of this episode is Mercer calls out the Union for attempting genocide. Thoughts on that super weapon were one of the things that we talked about. And of course, the treaty with the Kaylon, which was huge. Of course, this episode had connections to all of the Kaylon episodes as well. But I want to get your thoughts here on Domino. Hey, no, Amy, we can stick with Amy here because, of course, we've got a pattern going on here. We want to get your first reactions. And by the way, I just want to say I'm loving hearing what you've been saying because you haven't been with us this all season. And it's interesting to go back and relive this with you as you are with us.
Yeah. So, okay. I know for a fact I really like Domino, but I'm going over it. I'm like, I'm going to have to refresh my memory just a little bit more. But to answer a couple of your questions, I definitely was very sad to lose Charlie. By this episode, I was 100% all on board. Like, bring me more Charlie. She was fitting in. The chemistry with all of the actors was so, so good. Yeah, and that arc that she had with Isaac, and then to sacrifice herself when she was coming from such a place of anger, really made this episode really good. The choreography with the fighting scene with Kelly and Talea, that was a standout. I definitely remember that going, man, I wish we would have seen a little bit more of that action type of thing. So they did a great job with that. And yes, I really liked that the Krill and the Moclans, and that really did surprise me. And it's like, it's interesting to see, all right, friend or an enemy of my enemy is my friend. And, you know, the whole strategy of it and that dynamic, the political and what's going to shift the power in the quadrant, as they say in Star Trek. So very, very good.
Awesome. Kyle, thoughts on Domino?
The Orville Star Wars tribute episode.
A lot of fighting. The trench run and everything. Yeah.
Trench run. And of course, you had that great moment, too, that felt like it was right out of Star Trek 2009 with the skydiving. This was the most action-packed episode of the Orville ever. And it was so externally shot. The effects were amazing. It was so very well done. And then you add into, obviously, the emotional impact of what happens with Charlie in this episode. And it's so much. And I remember when this episode ended, how such a high we were on the Orville itself and what we were expecting and the conversations we had of what we were expecting in the hopefully just season finale for episode 10 and the left turns that come shortly after this. But this episode on its own was so powerful. And we had some very, very interesting different takes on Ensign Charlie Burke. And I know we're going to get to those in a little bit here, but the most action-packed, most intense episode of the Orville by this season, without any question, in my opinion.
Nice. Haley.
Yeah, this was quite an interesting thing because we're not bringing up the massive thing that the Kalon are like, yo, we need help. And whatnot, because I mean that scene where all of the Union ships and the Mocklins and the Crow are like, oh please, like you're like a fly on my shoe, let me just squish you type thing. And then all those Kalon ships show up, and I think visually that was one of the coolest things in this episode, was them being like, okay, now it's your turn, like second wave come in, the first wave's already happened, second wave needs to come out. That is a military tactic, and so I thought that was fantastic.
I'm glad you brought that up because we needed a weapon or a MacGuffin to shift the power from the Kalon, and they were able to do that. And I thought they did it in a really cool way, that they had this weapon, but then a weapon had to be destroyed later with someone who was key to making it operate, which I thought was wrapped up a little bit of like loose ends there, but I thought it was a really well done thing. And of course, Charlie ending her run. But I was really impressed with Ann Winters, who played Charlie, and I thought that she was, she stuck to laurels and her beliefs, but you saw her change, you saw her come about, and these unspoken moments that I thought was really important that you saw a lot of in this season. The looks, the moments of grief, the looks that say 1,000 words type of situations, which was happening a lot, and I thought that was really, really important in this season. All right, let's get to the final episode of season 3. Future Unknown. A celebration is underway aboard the ship on the season 3 finale of the Orville New Horizons. Isaac proposes marriage to Claire Finn, and she accepts. Lysella of Sargus 4, unable to bear the planet's increasingly oppressive downvote culture, cancel culture, requests asylum aboard the USS Orville, but struggles to adjust to the Union culture. In our away mission number 1, we talked about Lysella, and she's granted asylum aboard the Orville. I think I've got a picture of her here. Where is it? There she is. The subplot reflects current cancel culture. I think you brought that up, Kyle. And past history of people being in fear of not speaking up for what's right and being persecuted in the public eye. The society runs on controlling fear. Sound familiar? When Lysella sees the technology that the Union and the Orville have, she sees how it could help her world of Sargus 4. She wants to go back and help. We asked the question, would you do it? That was mission 1. Mission 2, detailed reaction breakdown of this season in the series finale. The season didn't wrap up all the loose ends. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it may not satisfy everyone, but there was a couple of things that it did wrap up, guys. Let's talk about the sandwich. Sandwich returns. Just got to say, one of my favorite moments of all of television was this freaking sandwich. Just because of what the Orville does. Okay. We had naked Mocklins, had that going on as well. As weird as this is, the makeup was phenomenal. I just thought that was great. We had Dr. Finn's reaction to Lamar's dating and courtship advice. Remember when she walks into the engine room and goes, Lamar! Gives him a dressing like, don't you give any more advice. And I think that we kind of agree. He should have stopped doing that with the zipper jacket way back in season 1 or 2, whatever that was. We had the big question, the bachelorette party. What was more fun, was it here I bring it up here, was it Elvis, Boris Elvis, or was it stripper Kalon? We also had those white Orville Union dress uniforms that were very cool, guys. We love those. And Ed and Kelly, they share a handhold and a smile during the ceremony. And we had a discussion, of course, about Lysella and Kelly discussion. And I just want to mention, and I want you to address this, Amy, because we were talking about this, that Lascella and Kelly discussion about the Union. You could say Star Trek's Federation involvement since the matter synthesizer and your career reputation, and how they kind of explained all of Star Trek to a certain degree, and how we don't use money, it's reputation, and this matter synthesizer changed everything. When all your material needs are done, who needs money? And we talked about Isaac and Claire's courtship, union, wedding throughout the seasons, and what we thought of that as well. And of course, this had connections to Majority Rule, which season 1, episode 7. And I want to bring this up because this is that same one where they make first contact and they have that dinner. And Kelly mentions that they share a birthday. She shares a birthday with Bortus, and they freak out and put him in jail. But before that happens, though, she mentioned when questioned about how the Union doesn't use the form of currency, Kelly mentions that the Union's value is wealth through reputation. She gives a similar speech to Lascella. So another throwback. And lets people know this is what's important to us. Explaining Star Trek. I'm just saying. Amy, you are shaking your head. I want your thoughts on on this series. I'm going to say season finale, not series finale. Anyway,
okay, well, you can say that. Absolutely, they are explaining Star Trek better than Star Trek did. The idea of there's no money. It's nice and fine, and it's like it's out there. But here in the Orville, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Sorry. But like, if you want to be good at your reputation, that's going to be your currency, and that you rise to the best. Like, that's where it's at. And that gives me a clear roadmap for me to go from where I am now to where this utopian, where I want to be in Star Trek, where I want to be in the Orville. They're connecting the dots better. They're describing it better. They're explaining we need to become better as a society where we care about the lowliest of us more than getting our riches. Like, I loved, and Kelly, and I noticed you put that in the notes. We will definitely talk about her, but what a tour de force she did in this episode and explaining and being the example and sort of knowing, but then yet being humble that we made this mistake and this is what happened. Like, the growth of that, I absolutely loved. I loved the wedding scene, very reminiscent to Picard in the beginning of Nemesis when he was giving his speech with Troy and Riker. And again, the naked ceremony just threw me back to Beta Z, where we shall all be going. I will be in the gym, thank you. But yeah, this and the sandwich and all of the throwbacks and the connections, it really did tie everything from all the way back from season 1 to this season. And I absolutely loved seeing Alara come back. And I was like, there she is. I was just so happy. I didn't know I missed her so much.
Let's bring up Alara. There we go. I got a picture of her up on the
Yes,
screen.
and definitely the bachelorette party with the Magic Mike Kalon. That's the one I want to be at.
Do you remember the tassels coming out of the nipples?
Yes! Oh my gosh, it was so funny. So funny.
I was trying to remember, guys. Now, with the whole we don't need money thing. However, in Star Trek universe, we think of Quark and his species and needing the latinum.
The Ferengi.
The Ferengi. And I'm thinking, like, what was the closest species in the Orville that could mirror the Ferengi? And I'm forgetting the name of them off the top of the head, but the ones that kept species in their zoo. Do you remember that? It was the first season. And in order to make a trade for Kelly and Ed, they gave them all of our was it TV shows that were
It
reality
was the
shows?
reality shows,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah, that was the closest
Housewives or something.
Yeah, it was all of them, and that was the closest thing that I could think of to the thing. But Kyle, your thoughts on this episode, and what you got?
First, I have a question for Amy, because this is a conversation we had when we on this podcast when we talked about this episode. Amy, what were your thoughts about the fact this could not only be the season finale, but it could be the series finale of this show? How did you feel about that after the first time watching it? It's like, did you feel like, okay, do I feel comfortable with how this went, especially with where we left off from episode 9? But I was just curious of what your thoughts were. It's like, were you okay with this being a possible season and series finale?
Well, I'm not okay with it, but I did watch it with the intent that this is the series, season, everything finale, because we just don't know. So I wanted to savor it and enjoy it. And yeah, all the loose ends that they tied up, the wedding, just everything. I felt good as this could be the end and I'll be okay. But of course, we want more Orville.
Kyle, your thoughts on Future Unknown?
So I'm going to go back to what I said when we talked about this episode. This was a good episode of the Orville, but it also felt like a season 1 or 2 episode of the Orville in the aspect of how there's a little bit more humor to it, just how it carried itself. I loved everything that happened with the wedding. I thought the wedding was great, whether, Bort is kind of hijacking the best man role, the Kalon, Isaac inviting the entire Kalon species basically to the wedding. All that was great. Everything with Lisette going back to that me a little bit out of left field, because I wasn't expecting it, considering the cliffhanger we kind of left with Domino, where you had Talea in prison. I thought we were going to maybe have some wrap up with Ed's daughter in this finale too, and not have that be a dangling plot line. And I had said in that podcast that we recorded at that point, as great as it was to see Alara, I would at first thought maybe when Ed said he had a surprise, it was going to be his daughter showing up. Like they had worked something out and he had gotten his daughter. But it was great to see Alara too, don't get me wrong. But I felt like this was a very good Orville episode, like I said, but it felt like maybe from the sensibilities of season 2 compared to what else we've gotten from this season. I've rewatched it since then. I do feel like, okay, if this is it, I feel like it ended on a good note with the wedding, but I still feel like there's more meat on that bone and some questions I still have that need to be answered. So I'm really hoping we do have something more, but that's kind of how I felt with it coming out of the episode.
You're not alone. Haley.
In looking back, I know we had discussed whether each of us would attend the bachelor or bachelorette party, and I think I had said originally the bachelor party because oh my gosh, the bachelorette one was a little too crazy for me. I actually, now that I think about it, I'm gonna join in what Lysella did and said that I'm too tired and I'm gonna go read a book in my quarters.
Gotcha.
I do have to ask though, Amy, we didn't really talk about it. What was your reaction when, Ed and Kelly and Halsey go to the Kalon and then the Kalon join? Like they basically at the end of this episode have not full admission to the union, but they're on if you're good and on good behavior and stuff, you can join. What is your thoughts on that? Because that, I did not expect any of that to happen whatsoever.
Yeah, well, going back to all the strategy of, the one where the Mocklins join with the Krill, that
Domino.
Strategic and
Mhm.
So I was feeling a shift. So I really enjoyed it, and I felt a really strong connection to sort of Picard series and how the Borg were our enemies for so long, and the Kalon are our enemies so long. And then there is a path where we can work together. And I just drew that connection. I'm like, oh my gosh, we made up with the Borg and now we're making up with the Kalon. So I really enjoyed that connection.
Kyle.
I actually have one more question for Amy too, because one thing she didn't answer, and she has been the most outspoken.
I knew where you're going with this, because I was going to ask her the same thing.
Ed and Kelly, and we all had a little difference of opinion on it. My thought was it's just two people who have moved past their divorce and the bitterness of it, and they've accepted what their relationship is and their mutual respect for each other, and they do have a love for each other, and they just were sharing that moment. But I got to know what Amy's thoughts were about that particular moment, because Amy, you've been the most outspoken.
Amy, before you answer, I want to just mention too, because I remember those conversations deeply. You were getting tired of them kind of flirting and Ed kind of pining at certain points. But I want to build this up a little bit. As we've seen this season, we've seen Kelly become kind of a role model and a motherly advice to Topa. And also the moment that she said, when Ed, you always seem to surprise me, when he's writing the letters to his daughter that she may or may not read. So we're kind of getting this more mature versions of both these characters, including Ed. And Ed has taken a back seat here. And I think that that Seth is doing this on purpose to kind of let other people shine, but he does have his moments. So I want to ask you, this teases, and this scene that I have up right here, when they hold a hand and he kind of shares a look with her, are you open to the idea of this possibly becoming a thing? What do you think?
No, I am not open to that idea. What I am open to is that they're having a mature, healthy friendship relationship where, yes, Kyle, they love each other, they respect each other. Kelly's really coming into her own. Ed now has a daughter to consider, and how that's going to complicate things. I was very happy for the handheld because it said so much. And then the look, like, it summarized these 3 seasons of will they, won't they. I thought that they ended it perfectly. You know, they got the Lamar and what's her name?
Talia.
Relationship. Yeah. They got that going, and I was like, oh, why do we really need a relationship here we've already got Claire and Isaac. Let's just focus on that. And I think that Lamar one, that was just fun and stuff. But the relationship with Mercer and Kelly, I just feel has transformed and has become greater than it ever was.
That's a great point. I appreciate you mentioning that because I think that these first, and especially when you start to see both characters changing and maturing and learning new things and stuff like that. So I think that is an important thing to consider, and I appreciate you mentioning that and sticking to your guns. Because myself, I was just like, get back together, please. Yeah. But the more mature approach is probably what you said, because we're going to come back around to Kelly in the season 3 finale missions that we have coming up. So guys, that was our recap of season 3, New Horizons of the Orville. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the main things that we need to address, some of the things that were left hanging, and a couple other little things after the break here. You've been listening and watching, of course, here on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel, Union Federation. This is, of course, the Orville New Horizons Season 3 recap and review, and we will be back. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast. We cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek, and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to the Orville New Horizons Season 3 recap and review here on the Union Federation podcast and the Fandom Podcast Network. We're going to continue with our own way missions, kind of summing up everything that we've talked about, but we got a couple things that we need to address. First of all, let's talk about the Union bosses, guys. This was one of the coolest things about the Orville is that not only did we get no bad rolls. We did. We'll talk about that. But they kept coming back, and they became. And Kyle, maybe it was you that mentioned it. You're like, these guys aren't guest stars; they're part of the crew. These are people that we want to see at hopefully an Orville convention signing the autographs. You know, we had, of course, Admiral Halsey, Victor Garber. We had Bruce Boxleitner, President Alcazan had a few spots there. Kelly Hu is Admiral Ozawa. Andy Chapman is Admiral Howland. Ted Danson is Admiral Perry. And we, I'm forgetting the other guy's name, so forgive me. But it was nice that we had these reoccurring characters of leadership, some of them flying their own ships. But I got to ask you, Amy, we actually had a Badmiral. We were wondering if we were ever going to get a Badmiral, but there was questions of whether or not Ted Danson's Admiral Perry was a Badmiral, especially the way when he explained himself, during that scene in Domino before, unfortunately, he was killed, and he gave his reasons because he knew that this weapon would be used against the Kalon because he didn't, trust them. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the admirals, our Union bosses, and rest in peace, Admiral Perry. Amy.
Yeah. Victor Garber has, become a part of the show. Definitely. I would almost say secondary character, even though I know he's not. But I loved seeing him. He would be my favorite. Ted Danson, of course, he's just amazing. But, the president, I loved seeing him and how unique he looked. We hadn't seen him. I sort of wish that we got to see a little bit more. That's why we need to renew the Orville, to see, all these people that are in the Union. And that president, he definitely stole my heart. I think he was my favorite.
Gotcha. All right. Kyle, your thought on the Union bosses?
Well, now that there's a gaping hole with the Union bosses, I'm just saying, Admiral Mercer. I'm still on board with that. I'm still rooting for that. But no, that, like I said earlier in this season, these are characters on this show. They recur enough that they are recurring guest stars. They're part of this family of characters. Obviously, Victor Garber, especially, he's in probably more episodes than any one of them. But they've all contributed greatly to the Orville. And I love Bruce Boxleitner as the president this season. Some great moments from him. And we're going to be talking about him and his contributions to the Orville here a little bit more shortly, Mr. Reitzel.
This is true. This is very true. All right, Haley, your thoughts on the bosses?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I love that we didn't really have necessarily a Badmiral per per se in all the ways that we know them of, but I really enjoy seeing all of them. And like Amy, I think we should have gotten more of the president. I thought that would have been really cool.
I agree on that. I want to learn more about Alcazan Tron. Bruce Boxleitner, of course, Tron fans. We know him from many other roles as well. The next thing I want to discuss, as Kyle was alluding to, and I don't know if you know this, Amy, but there was a novella that was released called Sympathy for the Devil. And this was a story that was supposed to be an actual episode, but whatever production issues that arose during COVID, of course, they decided to not make the episode. And it was supposed to fall between Midnight Blue and Domino. And a quick episode synopsis says, when Ed Mercer and the crew of the USS Orville come face to face with one of humanity's most vile ideologists, they must solve the moral conundrum of who to hold accountable for evil deeds, real and imagined. Sympathy for the Devil was originally released by Seth MacFarlane as the 9th episode of season 3, who later called it an outlier. And by the way, he has referred to this this novel as canon. It does count just like the comics do. And a conceptually experimental story. He says the script was a jettison when COVID-19 pandemic made filming abroad too difficult to manage. The lost script was picked up by a publisher, Hyperion Avenue, as a tie-in novella and published on July 19th, 2022. It is also available in audiobook, which I have and Kyle have. And we might be discussing it. Actually, no, we are going to be discussing it in a future episode of Union Federation. And audiobook version is released, I said, and it's read by actor Bruce Boxleitner, who plays President Alcazan. And it's 35 pages in length. It's an easy read. But I did listen to the first few chapters, and it starts off in World War I Germany and goes through Nazi Germany with a character that it follows. So I'm kind of very curious to see where I did stop listening to it because of everything else. I'm going to come back to it. But Amy, did you know this was a thing?
No, I did not. And I have written it down, and I might look for it, see if it's on Audible.
Definitely.
It is. I can confirm that it is for you, Amy.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
This sounds very interesting. And really what amazes me, it's like Seth wrote it. Like, who has time to be developing, I don't know how many shows, acting in and voicing and producing, like what this man can do anything. My goodness gracious.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and hit the next away mission here. I want to bring up Kelly Grayson, guys. She has been phenomenal. Excellently portrayed, of course, by Adrian Padalecki. And since we're talking about her, she's pretty much become an Ellen Ripley level badass this season. That's a reference to Alien and Aliens, by the way, Sigourney Weaver's character. And Padalecki really pulls it off. She has taken center stage in a lot of these episodes, especially during the Topa episodes. And she is really kind of coming to herself as a commander. And I want to ask you guys, has Kelly Grayson's character been set up to take command of a Union starship? And as you alluded to earlier, Kyle, maybe Ed Mercer becoming an admiral, we'll find out. Or maybe a possible spinoff. Has Seth has seemed to have taken a back seat and let Adrian shine. And there was a one-off line that made me think more about this when Ed responds to Kelly regarding Lacella wanting to go back home, says, well, she's been here a lot longer this time. She's seen a lot more. And then Ed says, well, you're the one that's been spending time with her. Let me ask you, if you had to make this call on your own, what would you do? And the season finale may not have given us all that we wanted, but it's obviously set up her character, and she has been front and center. And Amy, I got to ask you, would you like to see something like this explored more? And your thoughts on her character development through this series?
Yeah, I think you're right with saying if Ed became admiral and Kelly steps up, like she has definitely proven and has gone through all the training, has gone through all the experiences, is we're seeing on screen her taking control of inventory, the crew, morale, like everything that comes up. She's been going on away missions, risking her life. Like she has grown so much as a commander. And in this series or this season, she has been the one giving these meaty soliloquies that's explaining all of this ideology and making
What you're
Star Trek
saying
better than
is
Star Trek.
Adrian Padalecki basically just explained Star Trek. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, and she's been written to be the one to make these, beautiful, speeches. And, it was very reminiscent of Picard and his speeches, I really saw her command. I'm like, man, she is going to the top.
Kyle, what are your thoughts?
So, as far as being this Ellen Ripley type character, Adrian is cat in her. If you ever saw Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where she played Mockingbird in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she's an action star. She can easily pull it up. So that was easy enough. Where I just seen her grow is her command level. And again, I've said this, and I believe that this could be a way that they could continue doing the Orville. With such busier and busier schedule, you promote Ed to Admiral, hand the reins of Captain over to Kelly, so you can have Seth appear on screen as an admiral or even as a guest appearance here or there, with Kelly being the captain. And they've set up a couple of people that could be joining the crew of the Orville, depending on a few things. Maybe Topa, maybe even Lascelles from the season finale. Maybe she decides that the Union is her way to go with all of this. So there's some potential there, and it would be very interesting. Plus, there's some demons that Captain Kelly might have to fight, and that could make some very interesting storylines, Mr. Reitzel.
Agreed. And I like the fact that you highlight her as a good action star as well as a great actress, because if anyone's seen G.I. Joe Retaliation, her character in that, Lady J, she kicks some major butt. She's awesome in that. And of course, I always remember her from first noticing her in Friday Night Lights, and she was fantastic. And that's where I knew that she was just a fantastic actress as well. Haley, your thoughts on Grayson and Padalecki?
Yeah, I think that her character was written incredibly better this season. I mean, there was still some flaws. I know we kind of discussed about, possibility that she's an alcoholic and needs some help with some AA stuff going on. But on the flip side of that, I do think that her character development this season really took off, and it really did set up a possibility of her being a captain or something, whether it's of the Orville or she gets her own ship. It just kind of depends on, again, if #renew the Orville happens and it goes further from here.
Amy, I just want to remind you, there was a lot of drinking in this season, during the fun moments, and Kelly was always involved. I had first noted earlier in the season, like, is there space AA out there, or is it real alcohol? Does it do what our alcohol does? I kind of was this ongoing joke, and it just kept going and going. And so I don't know if you noticed that. Did you?
Well, I was drinking every time she was, so I was enjoying it.
That's why she didn't remember everything with Domino.
That's right.
Okay, go away, sober man. You've done your duty.
Yes. Yeah. Go away, sober man. You've been useful. That was funny. All right, guys, let's hit the next away mission. We got some stuff that we need to kind of wrap up, or hopefully that it's wrapped up. We'll see. Okay, so we've talked about Charlie Burke. I think we've covered Charlie Burke a lot here. If you have any other thoughts, feel free. But there's some unanswered season 3 threads that I did want to get your guys' thoughts on here. And I think it's important that we bring them up again here, because these are the things that we want to see answered in what other whatever we see with Orville. If we do get to season 4, maybe a movie or a spinoff, like maybe Kelly taking charge, and we see. I would totally watch that, by the way, Kyle. That would be fantastic. Keep us in the world. Let her take command and let let Seth produce it, and do whatever he can. If he's busy doing other stuff, I know he'd want to come in and do his things, and I think that would be great. But we've got some other things that we need to discuss here, guys. We've got this Expanse creatures, that took the other admiral from us and some crew members in that really horrible area that maybe they should never go again, and learn from Star Trek and put some buoys out there. Don't go here. The Krill were all right. But then we've got Denal, still immortal, powerful, could change things. The Kaylon in the Union. And the picture that I have up, I don't know if that picture I found online, by the way, is probably taken behind the scenes, where they're reading a book called Homo Sapiens, which I thought was kind of funny. What are they going to be like? Especially with Isaac now being a married man. And probably the more personal note here, guys, the Moclan and Krill alliance and how that's going to affect with Ed and his daughter and Talea. And I did bring up Ed and Kelly. What's going to happen with that? With all of this, all of these strings being still not being tied up here, Amy, what are your thoughts? Which one maybe intrigues you the most? And, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough one because you're right. There are a lot. It's Ed and his daughter. That would be my first one that I would want to see. And then that obviously brings in the Krill, which then brings in the Moclan and the Kaylon. So if we could just get that answered all the way around, then I think that sort of covers everything on the list.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Anything else?
Yeah, the Expanse creatures, that's definitely something. And I think they sort of wrote them like the Borg, because, at the end of season 3, Michael Piller was like, I'm going to find this big bad enemy. And then, okay, we don't have to worry about it. Oh, there's season 4. So they had to sort of create that. And I feel like that's what they did. It's like, here's this big bad enemy. We don't know about it. So then it's extra scary, added the tension to it. So I don't know if I really want it resolved, because I'm actually fine with it serving its purpose and being weird creatures. So
Gotcha.
I'm sort of iffy on that one, but everything else I want answered.
Okay. Kyle, what about you? What do you want to see, tackled if we see more Orville?
It's Ed and his daughter and the Moclan and Krill alliance, because I think that is the most emotional thing Orville fans have still, that they feel like they need answers to and they need some closure on. I think even, like I said, even if we don't get another season of the Orville, if we get a movie or something that finishes out that story, I can live with that, because I think you can deal with the Kaylon aspect of that as well, and maybe there's even a way to work the Denal action into that as well. Maybe this race intervenes somehow in the situation. You could actually, there is an outside way to tie up all these parts, all these things into one movie. It would be very dense, but you could do it. I could see a storyline where you involve these Expanse creatures, you involve the Krill and Moclan alliance with the Kaylon and Denali and everything else that's going on. You could wrap it up, maybe even in a 2-part 4-hour miniseries or something like that. But to me, the Krill and the Moclan and Ed and his daughter are the one that most Orville fans will tell you that's their biggest emotional investment, and that's what they want to see wrapped up. And I'm right there with them. Let's get some resolution to that.
The best thing that they've done with this season in this series, and I have to give the credit to Seth and the writers, was how well developed the crew is, and that if they highlighted one for a show or a spinoff like Kelly or anyone else, we would dive right into it. And knowing how they love to connect things from the past, we know that we'll see someone that we know and we love that's familiar dive in one way or another. So, but Haley, what are your thoughts of what would you like to see resolved if and when we come back to more Orville, whatever iteration that we get?
So I'm definitely on board with everyone else as far as, resolving up this relationship with Ed and his daughter, and maybe finally getting to see that come to fruition where she's not stuck in this little room with people taking care of her. She can see this world for what it is. And then, like Amy said, that would bring in the krill and all that kind of stuff. So that would be nice to see what happens. And I think, this continuation of the Kalon and what they're going to bring to the Union is really interesting, and see if they get full membership or not would be quite fascinating. To the Expanse creatures, I don't think necessarily that needs to be wrapped up, simply just because it seems to me like they're not like the Borg, where they're not going out into the universe to collect other people into becoming them. It's more of, if you come into their space, if you go into that nebula, then it's a problem. And so unless they find a way to like Dyson spear around their nebula and create a ship that goes around in space, I don't think really they're going to be much of a threat at this point. And with Denal, I don't know. I feel like we've had so much stuff because of Star Trek with the Q and interfering and all that. Like, I really
Q burnout.
I don't really need some other omnipotent being coming in and being like, I'm going to mess with stuff just because I'm bored and I'm going to live forever. And I've already lived for like centuries, and now I'm just bored like a cat. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to go mess with people. Like, no.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I have some thoughts. By the way, I'm with you. I want to see the whole Mocklin Krill Alliance and Ed daughter thing. Anaya, that's his daughter, coming in, and I'm going to bring that up again. But I want to wrap this up, guys. Before we wrap it up, though, I want you guys to tell me, what is your favorite episode of this season? And I'm going to challenge you else as well. What is your favorite episode throughout the entire series? I'm going to go first so I can give you guys time to think about it. My favorite episode of the entire series until season 3 was the Malloy episode with the meeting. What's her name in the past?
Laura Huggins.
Yes, Laura
Lasting
Huggins. Lasting impressions. Thank you. Yeah. And then Twice in a Lifetime. It brought it all back. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not afraid to admit it. This season made me cry several times. And that was one that just got me. And of course, the Topa episodes, having a daughter myself, was another thing that really, really got to me as well. So my favorite episode throughout the entire series is definitely the one with Laura Huggins from season 2. But my favorite of this one is, of course, Twice in a Lifetime. Who wants to go next? Kyle, what is your favorite episode this season, and what is your favorite episode throughout the entire series thus far?
My favorite episode this season has got to be Gently Falling Rain. I think it changed so much, and I actually think it's my favorite episode of the Orville altogether, because it took some things in directions I didn't think, and with the political talks and what Seth MacFarlane did and how he wrote this episode was just brilliant. But I want to throw this episode out because I think it is the most historical, important episode of the Orville, and that's About a Girl. Because About a Girl changed how people viewed season 1 and how people have viewed this show in general. I know It did that for all of us, and it's done it for so many other people. And I think About a Girl might be the most important episode of the Orville as far as the perception of the Orville.
Well, the question wasn't the most important one. So I asked you, this one is Gently Falling Rain is your favorite, but does that mean that is your favorite episode of the series?
Yeah, I would say it's probably my favorite. It's my favorite episode of the season and my favorite episode of the series.
About a Girl is your favorite?
No. Gently Falling Rain is my favorite episode. Is my favorite episode overall of the Orville, and because it's in season 3, it's also my favorite of the season.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry.
That's what I wanted to bring up, the point about a Girl, because I think I think that's very important that gets out there.
Okay, gotcha. All right. All right. I'm going to go to Amy. What is your favorite episode of the season 3? And what is your favorite episode of all the seasons?
Okay, so just so I'm not duplicating, and because Kyle really did sum it up, Gently Falling Rain, I'm tagging along with that. But because I can say a different one, I am gonna go Midnight Blue. I loved that Dolly, that will be so memorable. Oh wait, no, I wanted to say Future Unknown. Okay, well, it's okay. Midnight Blue. Yeah, so that. And then for my all-time, oh yeah, help me. What's the one where Ed meets Talia for the first time? And she's undercover, she's the human, and they're dating.
Krill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was when they were pretending to be the Krill, and she was the teacher. Okay. And then season 2, Everything on the Earth Excepting Fishes, is where she is the human form, and then they crash land on the planet.
Yes, that's gonna be for right now. That's one that popped into my head as just like all-time favorite. I really did enjoy that episode.
That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
Haley, what is your favorite episode of this season, and what is your favorite episode of the entire series?
So season, I am going with Midnight Blue, and series overall, I'm going with Sanctuary.
Oh,
very good. Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah. Any particular reasons why?
I was bouncing back and forth with Gently Falling Rain and Midnight Blue for this season, just because of the impact, and because being a woman was really powerful when those came out, given everything that was going on in this country, given what was going on with me personally at the time, and things like that. And so it was hard to choose between the two, but I think Midnight Blue is incredibly powerful because people should be able to be who they want to be. And no one should have to choose to be something that they don't want. And we should stand up for who we are and be proud of who we are and be fierce in who we are. And sometimes it's hard for other people to see that. And then there are people who do see that, and it can be really wonderful because they lift us up. And so that's why I'm going with that one. And then Sanctuary for a lot of the same reasons, because again, telling people and people living in fear because of who they are, it's not okay.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to run and hide and be somewhere just to be safe because other people don't like it, because that's your personal crap, and just stop it.
Excellently said. Well said. All right, guys, as we wrap this up, got a couple last things here. I thought I'd switch this up a little bit. We've already talked about the threads that we would like to see wrapped up, but I want to ask you something because I thought this would be kind of fun. If and when we get more Orville, what moment would you like to see happen or come to fruition or something like that? Because of all the character development that we've gotten this season and throughout the seasons, we love certain things between certain characters and the political aspect of everything. So I was thinking, I'm going to go first here. I would love to have a moment where Topa and Ed's daughter get to meet, and Topa becomes an elderly sister type and just becomes a friend and a confidant. And I would love to see that. And I would love to see a look between Ed Mercer and Kelly Grayson when they run off to hang out somewhere. That's what I'm going to throw out there. Amy, what would you like to see? One moment in the next season or something of the Orville?
I would like to see the. Oh, can you put that picture back of the
Sure.
season 3?
Yeah, totally.
Because
Here
I
we go.
was
Here we go.
looking at them.
Yeah. There you go. That's a good idea. There
Thank
you go.
Yeah. So remember the beginning of season 1 where Isaac was trying to figure out humor and Gordon and Lamar? Those three having those fun friend moments.
Right.
I would like to see that. I don't feel like we got them as friends. I do feel like we got Claire, Kelly, and
Tala.
Tala. Yeah. We got to see them hang out, like, the bride's party and, so we got to see that. But I sort of did miss those three guys hanging out. So I would like to see that relationship just be touched on again.
It seemed like we got a little more, a little bit of like Bortus and Malloy, and Malloy showing support of him in his summer body, and then like getting pissed when, as you mentioned earlier, Kyle, of Bortus hijacking the best man thing. And so, yeah, that would be fun. That's a good point. Kyle, what about you? Give me a moment that you would like to see come to fruition in season 4.
Oh, this is easy. This could be at the end of season 4 if there's a season 4. We have a transition, and we get the moment that Captain Kelly Grayson walks onto the bridge for the first time, and we see her sit in the chair, and then she looks over and looks down in that ensign seat, and Ensign Topa is in that chair.
Oh, man! Ah. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of playing on what I said, and I love that. I think that's great. Yeah. Get the kids together. But Topa's like, I'm an ensign now. That would be great. Because we need someone to permanently stay there, in that like navigator seat, that has been kind of a revolving chair, I guess, so to speak. Oh, Haley, what about you? What moment would you like to see explored in season 4 or what have you?
I'm sitting here and you guys are all mentioning things and I'm like, yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd really like to see that as well. I think for me, I would like to, and it's going to be kind of weird, but I would love to see this is calling my profession out, a session with Claire and Topa and Bortus and Clyden.
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
Getting all of the dirt out and into the air and into the open, but in this capacity that is saying, yes, these things were hurtful, but we are moving on and we are moving forward as like a unit, as a family, and being able to express and say the things that I feel like, when Clyden comes back, he apologizes to Topa, and I love that he stopped Topa from saying that it was her fault and that she needed to be sorry because she didn't. I loved that. And, the camera pans to Bortus and he's crying, but we don't really get a closure of them. Like the next time we see them, they're all sitting down to dinner and they're eating and that stuff. I would love to see this conversation, and whether it's a couple of episodes, because it's got to take progression, of Clyden and Bortus finally sitting down and saying, here's the things, this is what you did and I forgive you for it, but like work on that.
That's a good
that
thought.
would be
Kyle,
what I'd
you
like
had
to
something?
see.
I think I got one more that I think everybody here would be in agreement on. We have a scientist or something come on the Orville, and that particular person is played none other by Leighton Meester, who is a long descendant of Laura Huggins.
Ah, you're killing me, Kyle. Oh, man. Oh, you just want me to cry all the time. Oh.
And Malloy finally gets his well-deserved happiness. And get Kevin a tissue.
Damn you, man. Oh, just tug the strings.
Dance from the down.
I have one last question I want to ask Amy, because Haley and Kyle, we talked about this. I want to ask you, we saw not only the series mature, I believe, I know for sure, we saw Ed mature. I also think, as a writer and a creator, we saw Seth mature. And I want your comments because, as I mentioned earlier, he kind of took a step back a little bit. And we saw some funny moments with him, but it wasn't as jokey as we've seen before. And he got dramatic several times. There were some moments of expression that he didn't have to say anything, but we saw what he was expressing without saying something. I want your thoughts on Seth/Ed Mercer.
Well, I think I'm going to summarize more of Seth MacFarlane because this season has really taught me a lot of life lessons. And that means Seth has matured in the story. I'm not saying he was immature before, but that he's bringing up serious issues that need to be discussed. Forgiveness, acceptance, getting rid of unhealthy relationships, like getting the Mocklins to leave. That, you don't have to accept someone just because they're in your life. If it's unhealthy, you need to let them go and do it in a respectful way, just like they did with the Mocklins. I think him talking about like, how do we move to this utopia? I talked about it before. Like the issues of prime directive and how do societies evolve? I think that was so well done in Future Unknown. And like all of these societies going over and over again. And what did they do with advanced technology? Well, it's all based on where are we at as a society? Are we concerned about our individual families, or are we concerned about everyone and society as a whole? Like that evolvement, I think, was so important. And you're not going to get these type of issues unless Seth is writing them and tackling them head on.
I could not have said that better. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Amy, because you're right. That's one of the things that fans have been talking about is how, I mean, we didn't joke about it, but there was Star Trek fans wanting Seth to replace the head people at Star Trek because he's writing and doing a better job, according to many fans, about the direction in some of the new Star Trek. I think they were targeting that towards Discovery and Picard, not necessarily Strange New Worlds, because Strange New Worlds, I think, surprised a lot of people in, doing the kind of episodic thing, yet still paying attention to the bigger picture. But your comments ring so true with me personally, Amy, and thank you for saying that, because he has always been very forefront about his feelings about tough things in social commentary, and not afraid to say something about it, and calling people on stuff. And I think this is a way that he is able to express that. And like I said, tackle these social commentaries of what's happening with us as humans here on Earth and how we're treating each other, and being able to not disguise it on a show and just kind of dance around it. But this is going to happen on Orville as well as it happening in real life. So I thank you for saying that. And thus bringing us to Renew the Orville, hashtag Renew the Orville. This is happening a lot right now. And I want to mention there's a lot of fun memes out there. Dolly and Havina say Renew the Orville. One of my favorites is you see Chadwick Boseman as his character, Black Panther, saying, "Summon Hulu, call Disney, and get this show renewed." And of course, one of my favorites is, I love the episode where Domino, I think it's Domino, with the Krill Alliance with the Mocklins, and how well Talea is spoken. And this is my favorite. It would be maladroit not to renew the Orville. Yes, Kyle.
I just wanted to bring up something really important with hashtag Renew the Orville right now. Make sure when you put out that hashtag not only Disney, but hashtag D23, the big Disney Expo that's coming out in a few weeks, because that is a very, very important event to Disney. And you want to be able to get the Disney executives' eyes on anything that's they're really watching right now. And they are really watching reactions for D23. So make sure hashtag renew the Orville, hashtag Disney, hashtag D23.
And this is why, good point. And this is why when I said, Kyle, that when it moved to Disney Plus, I think it was like August 12th or 11th or something like that, that it is important to not only rewatch the Orville on Disney Plus, but also revisit, watch it more than once. I asked people on the first day, have the Orville just playing in the background in every single room, have season 1 play, have season 2 play, just keep it playing, keep it going, because they pay attention to not how many different people are watching it, but how many times each household is playing it and replaying it. And I came to a realization about that earlier this year while Miss Marvel was happening and Thor was being released, about how Disney keeps track of all of that. And they're probably judging right now whether or not this should be a thing and whether or not they need to seriously look at this. So please definitely check that out and do that. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful wrap up, and hopefully the listeners and the viewers can enjoy this. But let's get into some subspace signals. All right. Thank you, guys. First of all, this has been Union Federation episode 145, Orville New Horizons season 3 recap and review. And here on the Fandom Podcast Network, obviously. Yes, Haley.
No, sorry. Cat.
Oh, okay, Guy, you're waving to the cat. First of all, thank you for joining us on YouTube. Please give us a like and share. Subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube, and you will get, obviously, these shows up there as well. And our master feed for all of our audio podcasts can be found on Podbean, fpnet.podbean.com, and please join our Union Federation Facebook page, and Union Federation is also on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email us at unionfederation@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW, and you can find me on Instagram at AKyleFandom. And remember, hashtag not only renew the Orville, but hashtag Disney and hashtag D23.
Yeah, and throw in Hulu as well, please, definitely. All right, Haley, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Trekkie01D.
Awesome. And Amy, you're over there, BQN. Where can we find you and what's happening?
Yeah, doing a couple shows over there. Galaxy Class, which is about Next Generation. We just had a fun episode where we discussed what we would like to see in season 8.
Very cool.
We came up with some really good ideas. I'm really impressed.
I like that. That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah. Also, All Good Things, which is general all of Star Trek. So that's really fun to talk about all of them. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, and of course in our Facebook group.
Awesome. Okay, very cool. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. And of course, BQN, as you mentioned, is on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcast. And of course, please check out the BQN Collective, the listeners' Facebook group there. So this has been the Orville New Horizons recap and review. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great having you. I know you were busy and Orville came at a time where you weren't available, but it was very nice to revisit this with you.
It was. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be back. And yeah, we get Lower Decks.
Yep, that's right. Coming up soon. Yeah, Orb of Prophecy. We got Lower Decks coming up. Very excited for season 3. And of course, we've got Star Trek Prodigy season 1, part 2 coming out later this year. Kyle, thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you.
It is always a blast. At this point now, hopefully we're going to get Orville season 4 or at least something Orville. But yeah, I'm with Amy. I'm ready to get back on the Cerritos. It's time to revisit the Lower Decks.
Oh,
and
yes.
I have one question, comment, and exclamation. Why am I the only one going to STLV this year, people?
I've just arranged my trip to back to Australia, and Aaron's coming back out. So I've got priorities. That's why I can't. Kyle's got no excuses. I don't know.
Actually, I do have one, but it's called extension deadlines.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Darn IRS.
Let's keep the IRS happy.
No. So listeners, if you're here at STLV, please come by, say hi. Last minute, I did finally get a ticket. I can't even believe it because they're sold out. When was it? I don't remember STLV being sold out since the 50th. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited, and hopefully I will see you there.
Awesome. Haley, thank you so much as always. And I look forward to that counseling session too. That would be great.
Well,
With
thank
Claire.
you. Yeah. No, super great to be here. And yeah, I think it would be a nice closure to everything.
Agree. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll be back with more Orville as Kyle and I will be discussing Sympathy for the Devil. And who knows, maybe later down when things slow up a little bit, maybe Amy and I will get back to comparing some Orville season 3 episodes with some Star Trek Next Generation or something else. Would you be up for that sometime when things finally slow down, Amy?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right, guys. Again, remember, hashtag renew the Orville, hashtag, what was it, Kyle?
Disney,
D23.
hashtag D23 and hashtag Hulu.
Yes, thank you. And please rewatch on Disney Plus here in the States. We know a lot of people overseas already have it on Disney Plus. Keep doing that. Rewatch it there. But more importantly, watch it on Disney Plus. If you have both Hulu and Disney Plus, make sure you do that. Guys, thank you so much. This has been great. And until next time, hailing frequencies are now closed.